Welcome, Dr. Batu Shakari, for another episode. We are live. Welcome again.
All right, brother. Yes, sir. It's always good to be in your company, of course, and to be putting in this work, much needed work.
I appreciate it. And today we have a topic, and I'll let you expound more on the presentation that we received many, many years ago from our esteemed ancestor, Dr. John Henry Clark. The video's on YouTube. I'm gonna leave a link in here so people can see it. The title: "We Have No Friends." We have no friends.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you go ahead, Dr. Shakari, and expound on what that means to us today, 50 years later.
Yes, sir.
30,
Yes, sir.
30, 20 years later, however long it's been. I say 50 years because it's been 50 years after the civil rights struggle that we believe we've achieved some kind of semblance of progress in this society. But I believe Dr. Clark did that speech roughly about 20 to 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. You know, it's very important that we understand, and first and foremost, that we study the work of Dr. John Henry Clark. He did a yeoman's job relative to pointing out information that is critical for us getting out of the global circumstance and condition that we find ourselves in today. And not just Dr. John Henry Clark, but of course, all of our great revolutionary thinkers, leaders, and teachers. It's very important that we study them and that we stay up to date with our study, because information is infinite, knowledge is infinite, truth is infinite, and we need to keep that in mind as we study our great thinkers and teachers. This is critical. We've got to do this. We've got to always, again, keep uppermost in our minds that knowledge is infinite. Life itself is infinite. And therefore, there's a lot of information that's coming across our plate today that was not available to us 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. So we need to keep pace with the great thinkers among us today. What are they saying today? There are great thinkers among us today who are saying great things, insightful things, that we need to be mindful of the things that they're saying today. I have written over 12 published books. One of my most well-known books, of course, is Tribalism, Mysticism, Primitivism, and the Rise of Genocide Against the African World. But I wrote that book over 30 years ago. Since 30 years, there's been a mountain of issues that have come up relative to the African world. And I have learned a mountain of greater things to impart to our people. So my recent book is the book Facing the Truth, Straight with No Chaser. And this is what we need to be mindful of as we study our circumstance and condition in the world. We need to be mindful of the literature that is being put out here today, not the 30-year ago stuff, not the 50-year ago stuff, the 100-year ago stuff. We got information available to us that was written thousands of years ago, and much of that information is relevant. But we need to be clear that time, circumstances, and conditions are in a state of constant change. And therefore, we must keep pace with the information that is available to us today. We need to keep pace with the great thinkers and writers and other such revolutionary Africans among us today who are putting out profoundly important information for us to study and build upon. So let's get in right into it with this videotape that was put forth by Dr. John Henry Clark, one of our greatest revolutionary minds, one of the greatest African revolutionary thinkers that the African world has produced. I said one of the greatest. He put out this piece called We Have No Friends.
Dr.
He put it out
Shakari,
on video. Okay.
one moment. I'll cut you just a moment. I do apologize. Just for the record, for those who see this broadcast, can you explain to me exactly what you mean by revolutionary when you use that term in regards to African consciousness?
Okay. In regard to African consciousness, when you talk about those individuals who are revolutionary, you're talking about those individuals who are thinking along the lines of bringing about positive change within the African world. So when I talk about revolutionary, I'm talking about those thinkers who are centered on doing things and putting out ideas that are moving African people in a direction of positive change for us as a people globally. That is what I see and what I understand what the term revolutionary and what it means. It means change, and in particular, positive change relative to African people and our liberation struggle. You know, again, relative to this revolutionary video that Dr. Clark put out, among many other revolutionary pieces that he put out, many other, that was just one among many. But this piece was profoundly powerful. It really was. It was profoundly powerful because he made a statement that many of us ignore. And that statement is that we have no friends in the world. The African world has no friends. And there's a reason for that. And that is what I'm going to be centered in on today. Not in particular the particulars of what he said in that video, because just go to YouTube and tap it up. We Have No Friends, Dr. John Henry Clark. It'll come up right up on screen. Look at it from beginning to end. Look at it and get an understanding of what that great elder was teaching us, which was absolutely true. African people have no friends in the world. But my focus is, why is it that African people have no friends? It is true, but why don't we have any friends in the world today? Well, there's really a very clear-cut reason why the African world has no friends. And that is because relative to nations, history has categorically proven that the weak and vulnerable don't attract friends. The weak and vulnerable of this world within the so-called human kingdom, they don't attract friends. No. The weak and vulnerable, they attract predators. That's who they attract. They attract predators. And By contrast, the strong and formidable, they're the ones who attract friends. People who are strong and formidable, they attract friends. And few, if any, predators. That's the strong and formidable. So this is the contrast that you look at. African people today have attracted predators. Why? Because we're weak and vulnerable. That's the reason why. A people who are weak and vulnerable, that's the only thing you can expect to attract. You're going to attract predators who are going to be taking advantage of your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities as a people. And this is what is going on in the African world. Now, many of us would say, well, you know, at the time that African people lost their freedom and independence in the world, let's say in ancient Kemet, some 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, in ancient Kemet, so-called Egypt, African people were in fact a strong and formidable people. We were a strong and formidable people. When we were first confronted by foreign enemies seeking to invade our land and violate us and do all the things that nations do. We need to be clear that there is a such thing as the law of opposites that exists throughout the universe, not just in the world. The law of opposites is in operation throughout the entire universe. So this is what happened relative to African people. We came across other nations who saw, as Dr. Clark would point out to us, and he pointed out in that tape too, we have no friends. We came across other nations who saw what we had, wanted to have those things for themselves, and didn't want to pay for it. So even though we were strong and formidable as a nation, as a people, there were some fundamental flaws that had already started raising its ugly head. We talked a little bit about those things in our last presentation that we had here. We talked about the rise of tribalism, mysticism, primitivism, misleadership, miseducation, and ultimately all of that evolved into mismanagement of our labor and land resources by these inept leaders and scholars. Well, that's essentially what happened relative to how we were brought to ruin. Even though we were strong and formidable initially, like I said, we were strong and formidable, a very strong and formidable nation of people in the world. And all of the other nations in the world knew it. But then they started paying attention to the mistakes that we started making. In particular, the mistakes of those who we came to regard as being our leaders and scholars. This is a major problem in the African world. That was one of the critical problems that brought about our ruin in ancient Kemet or Egypt. It is also the central problem that's keeping us in our present state of ruin today. The same thing. So we found a situation up in ancient Kemet where, even though, again, we were strong and formidable, other nations started observing the fact that we were making some critical mistakes as a nation of people. And see, when you start making critical mistakes in the eyes of your adversaries, they start moving in earnest against you to destroy you. And that is exactly what happened within the African world. That's exactly what happened in the African world. But see, there's another element to the issue of a people being strong and formidable, but yet still falling into ruin. It's not only just the mistakes that they start making, even though that is a critical part of it, but many times you'll find that people who are strong and formidable fall into the trap of becoming who of becoming braggadocious, of becoming unwieldy in how they interact with other nations. You start becoming a braggadocious people. You start flaunting your knowledge or your skills or your technologies or your advancements, etc., etc. You start flaunting that stuff in the face of other people. And that alone starts creating problems for you. And this, again, is another factor that led to our downfall and ruin as a people. See, nobody likes a show off, a braggadocious person. Nobody likes that. And nobody likes a show off, braggadocious people either. Nobody likes that. Now, you can have a people who are strong and formidable, but they're humble. Oh, everybody know that that person or that people is not someone to be toying with. It's not someone to be playing with. But they don't flaunt it in anybody's face. Everybody just know it. And they know it because when you begin to violate those individuals or that people, they demonstrate to you in no uncertain terms that they ain't having it. So you're not going to violate them. You're not going to come into their land having your way with them. You're not going to enslave them. You're not going to commit genocide against them. You're not going to do anything to them without suffering serious consequences. So see, there is a such thing as a people being strong and formidable, yet humble. Humble in their interactions with other nations. Humble in how they speak to other nations, again, how they interact with other nations, and how they treat other nations. But at the same time, again, not only are they humble, but they're firm, they're serious, and everybody knows it. When I was coming up as a lad, how many times have I seen bullies in the neighborhood? I'm talking about bullies. And most of the bullies that I knew in the neighborhood were braggadocious. Oh, yeah, they were braggadocious. They would brag about how good they are with their hands and how good they are with fighting. And they would point at all of the people that they were able to beat up. Okay? Not knowing that by doing all of this bragging, what they were doing was setting themselves up for a future conflict. That's what they were doing. They were setting themselves up to be destroyed, to be attacked and destroyed. Because see, you bragging on how bad you are, how tough you are, how rough you are. I also knew some individuals in the neighborhood who weren't bullies. They weren't bullies at all. They were humble. They were approachable. And everybody liked them. Everybody in the neighborhood loved them. But everybody in the neighborhood knew beyond any shadow of a doubt that that person Wasn't nobody for you to be toying with, for you to be playing with, for you to violate, for you to treat any kind of way. They wasn't the type of person that you talk to any kind of way. Oh yeah, they were humble and they were respectful in their interactions with you, but they didn't let you run over them. This is the type of people African people must become. Not this braggadocious people bragging about all of what we know, what we've done, and all the rest of that. Don't nobody care nothing about that. And there are people in this world who will take issue with that and take you to task over that. Why bring that drama upon yourself when you can be humble and still be strong and formidable? A force for everybody to reckon with if and when you are violated by others. See, this again was another mistake that the African world made. And some of us are making the same mistake today, popping off at the mouth about what we gonna do and how we gonna do it and all the rest of that. Then these other nations are looking at us, those of us who are doing this today. We did that thousands of years ago, and look at what happened to us. But you got some of us today still bragging about how bad we are, how rough and tough we are, and other nations are looking at us today and they laugh at us because they know you ain't doing nothing. Here's a nation of people who are living in a state of total dependence and total vulnerability to every foreign predator nation on the planet. We don't adequately feed ourselves, house ourselves, clothe ourselves, educate ourselves, employ ourselves. We don't do none of that. But yet we got all this braggadocio up under our belt, talking about how much of a man we are, how much of a warrior we are, how much we're going to hold on to our traditions no matter what. That's insanity. First of all, men, real men, provide for themselves and protect themselves. Men, real men, I said. They provide for themselves, their families, and their nation. That's what real men do. When our enemies look at us, they don't see no real men, because we ain't providing for ourselves, protecting our families, nor are we protecting our nation. So they know right there, without any fear of contradiction, that we ain't men. They know it. Real warriors protect themselves, their families, and their nation. All nations know that. Real warriors protect themselves, their families, and their nation. When our enemies look at us, they can see that we don't protect ourselves, we don't protect our families, and we don't protect our nation. They know that. So even though we got all this braggadocio up under our belt, talking about how much of a man we are, how much of warriors we are, they laugh at such nonsense because they know the proof is in the pudding. You don't become a man just because you say you a man. You don't become a warrior just because you say you a warrior. When I hear Negroes talking about they warriors, when I hear that, the first thing I ask myself is, okay, you a warrior. Where's your army at, Negro? Where's your Navy, your Air Force, your Marines, your Special Forces? Where's your Space Forces? Where's your modern weapons and weapon systems? Where's all that stuff at? If you so much of a warrior, why are you under everybody's foot on the planet? Why are we living in a state of total dependence and vulnerability to every foreign predator nation on the planet? But we sitting around here talking about we men, we warriors, and we got everything we supposed to have. And we're gonna hold on to our traditions no matter what. Come on now. There are traditions. Do you know what people must do with their traditions? I said they must do it. I didn't say they should do it or it would just be a good idea if they did it. I said this is something that people must do with their traditions. A people must do with their traditions. They must constantly review them and revise them as necessary to keep pace with the changes that take place in the world. You can't hold on to traditions that are no longer valid in the real world, in the modern day world. What are you talking about? Tribalism, mysticism, and primitivism is what has destroyed the African world. That means that you and I have not been keeping pace with taking a serious look at some of these traditions that we have that's no longer valid, that's no longer functional in the real world, in the modern day world that we live in. You and I have to keep pace with modern day realities. Because if you and I don't keep pace with modern day realities, we will fall victims to those nations who have been keeping pace with modern day reality. See, in the modern day world, production, I'm just going to use that as an example. In the modern day world, over 95% of the things that's produced in the world today are produced by machines. They're not produced by hand. They're produced by machines. That is a modern day reality.
It's a great point.
So if you and I are holding on to tradition that we're going to keep on producing everything that we use in life, we're going to keep on producing it by hand because, see, that's the way the ancestors did it. So that's the way we're going to keep on doing it. Okay? We're going to keep on doing it the way the ancestors did. They rode around on mules, so we're going to ride around in mules. They walked around barefooted in the world. We're going to keep walking around barefooted in the world, even though that's a damn lie. The first people to wear shoes was us. We're the first ones to produce shoes. What are you talking about? So, see, we need to be clear that a people must keep pace with modernization. You can't hold on to your primitivism and think that you're going to fare well in the world today. Because I can tell you without fear of contradiction, you and I will not fare well in this world, taking a back seat to everybody else because we want to hold on to these antiquated traditions that's not serving us well at all. In fact, they are bringing about our utter global destruction. Primitivism destroys nations globally. Europeans rule the world because they have achieved the highest level of modernization among all of the nations that occupy this planet. So if you and I talking about we want to be free and independent and have power, then you and I have got to become fully invested in modernization. We've got to become fully invested in international African nationalism. That's got to take the place of the tribalism that we keep holding on to. Because that's the way tradition says that we had a whole bunch of tribes. So we're going to keep on having the tribes because that's traditional. That's what African people do. Well, we found out over time that that's destroying us. So see, we can't keep going with that. So tribalism is out. Primitivism is out. Mysticism. We want to keep on holding on to mysticism because, see, our ancestors believed in a whole bunch of mystical nonsense. So we're going to keep on holding on to that because our ancestors came up with that and they developed that, and that's what we're going to do. Oh, no, we can't do that. We've got to lock into the science that our ancestors talked about spiritually. Yeah, we're going to embrace that science, but we got to drop that mysticism because we've got to embrace fully realism. We've got to become fully committed to reality. What is real? What's real in the world? We got to go beyond belief and start locking into things that we know, that can be confirmed to be so, not what we believe. And until we get there, we're going to continue to take a back seat to every nation on the planet. That's a fact. So just go ahead.
Go ahead. I wanted to touch on 2 points. One, you often go back to Kemet quite regularly in our discussions, and in your work even.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about the importance of Kemet toward modernization today, and also emphasize the fact that for the last 500 years or so, we've been living under colonialism and neo-colonialism, which basically means that we've been under someone's domination. Even in the light of us having traditions, as you mentioned, we have traditional culture, we have traditional ways of doing things, but we've still been under someone else's domination and control for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of the role that us tapping back into Kemet, ancient Kemet, so-called Egypt, the role that Kemet plays is profound. And I can't say that enough, because Kemet teaches us the critical lessons about not only the positive things that we have done, but it also gives us clear insight into the negative things that we have done that have brought about our destruction. I have said this over and over and over again. It is not our positives that brought about our destruction that has put us in the global condition that we're in today, the horrible global condition that we're in today. It was not our positives that did that. Oh, no, that is our negatives. We started doing a whole bunch of negative things as a people that brought about our destruction. We have got to pay attention to the negative things that we have done, not just the positives. We need to stop doing that. We need to look at both our positives and our negatives. You build upon the positives and you avoid those negatives so that you don't repeat them. Not only do you not want to repeat them in your lifetime, but you want to teach about those negatives so that those who come behind you don't repeat those negatives either. This is the job that has to be done relative to our study of our history, especially our ancient study, such as the study of what we did in ancient Kemet, which was one of the greatest, which was the greatest ancient civilization and culture we built. Right there, Kemet, a powerful civilization and culture. There's no question about it. Powerful. We did great things in the areas of science, technology, engineering. Oh man, engineering is no question about it. Look at all of the great structures we built out of stone. That's some engineering for you. That's also some technology, because we had to have a clear understanding of technology to even be able to carve out the stones and put them together in the way that we did. We were master engineers. But look at us today. We don't even produce a toothpick or a roll of toilet paper. These are the people. We are the people who built those great structures in ancient Egypt. Yes, we are their descendants. We are the ones who came from those people. Those are our ancestors. But look at us today. That means we're missing something in studying our history. We're missing the negatives that happened. We're missing the knowledge and skills that they handed down to us that informed us of the things that they did wrong. Oh, yeah, we like to talk about and rattle on and on and on about all of the great things, the things that we consider that they did was great. Oh, we love to rattle on and on and on about the positives. And then we turn around and ignore the negatives. Well, see, in ignoring your negatives, you're setting yourself up for continued destruction, because it was their negatives that brought about their destruction, and we have inherited their destruction. So if you ain't studying their negatives, you're not going to be able to identify the things that brought about our destruction. You're not going to be able to do it. You can't keep concentrating on your positives. No, no, no. You study the negatives. And this is critical for us to recover from the global condition that we find ourselves in. See, our ancestors taught us great stuff. Great stuff. If we want to rebuild the African world, we're going to have engineers, ain't we? Well, our ancestors were master engineers. You need to learn what were the things that what were the engineering techniques that they used to build the great things that they built. Even though we ain't talking about building no death houses for nobody. See, that was a mistake. See, you use your engineering skills for the living. You don't use your engineering skills to create shrines to the dead, while you do nothing to develop engineering skills that's going to allow you to establish and maintain a functional, living civilization and culture for yourself. And see, it was our failure to do that made it possible for Europeans, Arabs, Jews, and other foreigners to come in and destroy our civilization and culture.
So what you're saying is, so you're saying the destruction of Kemet paved the way for the further constricting and control, destruction of the continent completely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We kind of miss out on that piece of history and why it's so important that these ideas and concepts of colonialism and neo-colonialism are nothing compared to what the destruction of Kemet led to impacting us today. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we need to understand that Kemet was the seed. Kemet was the place of first contact. That is where they achieved their first victory over the African world. So if you want to know how to go about the business of undoing what has been done to the African world, you got to go to the place of first contact. What were the mistakes that we were making in ancient Kemet? All of the colonialism and neo-colonialism and all of the rest of the things that happened afterwards, that's stuff after the fact. They didn't do nothing relative to that, but simply build upon the victories that they had achieved over us in ancient Kemet. That's all that is.
Powerful, okay? Powerful.
So
Wow.
this is the reason why it is critical that we study ancient Kemet with a clear eye. Take off those rose-colored glasses that you keep putting on, trying to deify this, trying to deify this as if this is something that no one should do. No one should make any critical analysis of our ancestors in ancient Egypt, as if a people's history is some type of sacred cow. Again, a people's history is not a sacred cow. A people's tradition is not a sacred cow. A people's culture is not a sacred cow. All of these things are things that a people must constantly, I can't say it enough. These are things that a people must constantly revisit and revise if they are to stay in sync with the realities of how life operates in the world today. You have to. You and I have to. Yes, there are many things in our history. There are many things in our traditions. There are many things in our past culture that are definitely applicable to us today. There's no question about that. But we also need to be mindful of the fact that some of those things that come out of our history, our culture, our traditions, some of those things have proven themselves to be counterproductive to us as a people. They have contributed to our destruction as a nation of people. And we must be capable of not only identifying those things, but also ridding ourselves of those things that are destroying us. I'm clear. In fact, I wrote a book about it. I'm clear that African people are very tribalistic. I'm clear about that. We are tribalistic. Tribalism has been a part of African history since anybody can remember. So I'm clear about that. But I'm also clear that tribalism played a major role in bringing about our destruction. And I've said before, I'm not the only African thinker who has been mindful of the fact that tribalism is a horrible disease. Dr. Chancellor Williams wrote about it in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, back in 1971. That was over 50 years ago. The Honorable Haile Selassie, he wrote about the devastating danger of tribalism to the African world. He wrote about that back in the 1930s. That was almost 100 years ago. So we keep ignoring the need for us to change where change is indicated. You've got to change when change is indicated. When it becomes critically important for you to change, you must change or suffer the consequences for your failure to do so. You can't hold on to stuff that's destroying you. I don't care how familiar you have become with doing it that way. If it is destroying you, you must let it go and move on to doing those things that's going to preserve and protect your right to exist. And see, African people are failing to do that. We continue to hold on to the tribalism that's destroying us, the mysticism that's destroying us, the primitivism that's destroying us. And then we keep holding on to these leaders and scholars who are misleading and miseducating us. We see what they're doing, but we have become comfortable. We have become comfortable with individuals who continue to mislead and miseducate us. Well, If you continue along the path of those who are misleading and miseducating you, and that misleadership and miseducation is destroying you, and you are not changing it, then you're getting what your hand called for. And that holds for individuals, and it also holds for nations. No nation of people can continue to go down the path that we're going down today and expect that they are not going to suffer any negative consequences for continuing to go down the same path that they've been going down for thousands of years. Oh, no. No. It's no such thing as that. Life don't operate like that. I believe it was the great historian Lerone Bennett who said that, I'm just paraphrasing, who said that history doesn't forgive those who lose their way. I take it a step further. Life does not forgive those who lose their way. Life ain't forgiving you because you keep on going the wrong way, even though life is showing you all these signs. Signs are constantly popping up that this is not right. You're going the wrong way. Signs are constantly popping up. Individuals are constantly being born in the African world who are trying to show African people that we're going the wrong way. And we're ignoring those individuals. Again, because we have become comfortable with following individuals who keep telling us nonsense, who keep telling us stuff like, you know what, African people ain't slaves. We're enslaved, but we ain't slaves. You get the hell out of here. Enslaved means slave. What are you talking about? That's nothing more than the ramblings of a fool. And everybody knows what's going to happen if you keep following a fool. We, as African people, we have an obligation, not only to ourselves, but to all of our coming generations, to build upon those things that are in our collective best interests, and to dismiss those things that are working against our collective best interests. We have an obligation to do that.
Dr. Shakari, it seems as though many of us are just kind of, and we might have touched on this before, but it just seems like many of us are just confused on what success is or what the goal should be. And in light of what you're saying about us following misleadership or being misguided and misdirected. But it just seems as though if there's not a clear objective on what to do, not what to do, but where we're going, then people would continue to be misguided or misdirected. Even when they think that, this person is the warrior scholar or warrior elder, or they're putting in the work, but where are we going? Can you make it clear, for the record, where do we go? What's the end goal and end game?
Okay. Well, I want to say this right off front, right off the top, that presently, under the present so-called leadership that exists in the African world today, and I'm including the overwhelming majority of those who consider themselves to be warrior scholars in the African world. I'm including them in the mix as well. Because when you read some of the stuff that they putting out here, it becomes clear that they are misleading African people and miseducating African people. And where are they leading us to? It's clear where they're leading us to. We're headed towards complete global annihilation. That's where the African world is headed towards right now, today. We're headed towards complete global annihilation. That's where we're going right now, today. And if we don't change the way we think and change our interactions and change our direction as a nation of people, we will be globally annihilated from the face of this earth. Now, I'm not saying it won't be no Africans left. It's just like the Indians here in America. They have been completely annihilated. Oh, yes, that don't mean that it ain't no Indians in America. Of course, there's still Indians here, but they have no real presence in the world. They are impacting no real outcomes in the world. They have no power nor control over their lives, land, development, nor destiny in the world. So that's where we're headed now. Now the question becomes, and I want to answer what you pointed out. Now the question becomes, where do we need to be going? Where do we need? What is the end game? What should our focus be? I have said, and our greatest thinkers and scholars have said the same thing. Our direction must be liberation, which is total freedom and independence from all foreign domination and control. That's what liberation means. It means we must achieve total freedom and independence from all foreign domination and control, be it political, economic, intellectual, spiritual, technological, military, or otherwise. That means total liberation. That means you and I can no longer go through life thinking that we can live in a state of dependence on other people and think that we're going to have good outcomes. You and I cannot live in a state of total vulnerability to every foreigner on the planet and think that we're going to have a good outcome. There's no good outcome for any nation of people, and I don't care who they are. There's no good outcome for any nation of people who takes a position that they can live in a state of total dependence and vulnerability to all the other nations of the earth and then think that they're going to have a good outcome. You're not going to have a good outcome. Other nations who you depend on are going to take advantage of you. That's what's going to happen to you. If they see that you are not feeding yourself, housing yourself, clothing yourself, educating yourself, you're not producing your own modern sciences, modern technologies, modern machinery, modern weaponry. They see that you ain't producing none of that. In fact, you don't even produce pens, pencils, paper, toothpicks, toilet paper. You don't produce that. Toothbrushes, toothpaste. You don't even produce none of that. Let alone the modern technologies that exist in the world. You and I don't produce the cars, the trucks, the trains, the airplanes. All of these things are things that exist in the world. We don't produce the cell phones and the tablets and the computers and all of the other things that make modern living possible. So any nation of people that consigns themselves to living in a primitive state, you're living in the past. You've decided that you're going to live in the Stone Age. Any nation of people who decides that they're going to live in the Stone Age, even though they're living in the space age,
wow,
they're going to be destroyed. I can tell you what's going to happen to them. There's no question about it. You're going to be destroyed. They're going to take whatever place you occupy on the earth, and they're going to make that space their space. And you going to go the way of the dinosaur and the dodo bird. That's what's going to happen to you. Let me say that again. Any nation of people who decides that they're going to live in the Stone Age while everybody else is living in the space age, I can tell you what's going to happen to such a people. They're going to go the way of the dinosaur and the dodo bird.
Now, Dr. Shakari,
yes.
Many people would say they listen to that because I've heard this dozens of times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we survived the Ma'afa. We survived the enslavement. We survived Jim Crow. We survived colonialism. Right. You know, they can't stop us. The ancestors are going to protect us. And God's gonna protect us, and we're survivors. There's genocide can never happen to the African race. What do you say to that?
It's only one word to say for that: insanity. Absolute insanity. See, we need to be clear. There is a world of difference between enslavement and genocide. There's a world of difference between those two things. Slavery is not directed towards killing a people. Oh, no, that is not the objective of slavery. The objective of slavery is to capture a people and transform them into working units or commodities, if you will, for their advancement, empowerment, and enrichment. That's the purpose of slavery. Slavery is not about killing people and destroying them. No. A slave is no good to you if he's dead. So I'm not interested in killing a slave. I'm interested in killing a slave who has become obsolete. And that's where genocide comes in at. That is the major problem with a people remaining slaves. See, slavery is not a permanent state. It never has been. I don't care how long it lasts. It lasted for hundreds of years, and we survived the Ma'afa, and we survived slavery, and we survived we survived everything that the white man threw at us. I hear that. I've been hearing that for over the 50 years that I've been involved in our struggle. Yeah, you survived that, but I tell you one thing, you ain't gonna survive systematic annihilation. You're not going to survive a genocidal process if you don't stop the process. African people have got to stop the genocidal process. That's what's on our plate today. No one is thinking about enslaving us and exploiting us, because that's what slavery is. It is an institution for exploitation. That's what slavery is, an institution for exploitation. Genocide is an institution for annihilation. Genocide means I'm getting rid of you. I have no longer use for you, and that land that you got, I'm taking every inch of it, because you ain't using it no way. You're not building anything. You're not making things happen in life. You're not even moving out into outer space, understanding that this sun that we live under, I know we don't want to talk about it, but this sun that we live under ultimately is going to burn out. It's called sun death, in case you don't know what it is. Sun death is inevitable. That sun is not going to shine forever. When that happens, what's going to happen to you? Have you made any inroads out into outer space so that you can move from this planet to another planet should that become necessary? This is the type of real thinking, revolutionary thinking that is needed in the African world. We can't stay in the Stone Age. We can't keep on talking about, oh, well, God is going to look out for us. Jesus is coming back. The mothership is coming. Allah is going to do it. Yahweh, Amen Ra. Get the hell out of here. Life don't operate like that. We have got to get serious, and I mean dead serious, about our continued existence as a life form upon this earth and in the universe. Because, see, this planet called Earth, this is just one of trillions of planets that exist throughout this universe. You and I should have our eye on going to some of those other places and setting up a place where we can stay at in case something happens to this planet, something happens to this solar system. In fact, if something happens to this galaxy, wherein it's no longer habitable. We've got to be thinking along those lines. We've got to be thinking long range. This is what we've got to do as a people. But first and foremost, we've got to become independent producers of the things that we use here in life today. We can't be dependent on other people to produce the things that we use in life. We can't be vulnerable to every nation of people on the planet because we're not independent producers of our own modern weapons and weapon systems. We can't continue to go through life being sick and pathetic servants and imitators of other people, thinking that we're getting somewhere. That's not going to work. African people are in the crosshairs of a multitude of foreign predator nations. And one of the prizes that they have been looking for thousands of years is our continental African homeland. You and I, to this date, still have not put adequate protections on that motherland. Oh, no. We're too busy chasing other people's money. And see, that's the reason why I know we talked about it before, brother, but that's the reason why it is critical that we talk about economics. It's critical because we have a completely faulty concept of what economics is all about. We have a faulty concept of what type of economic system we're going to have to establish among ourselves to get out of the death trap that we're in, for us to become independent producers of the things that we use in life. You can forget about money because that ain't going to facilitate it. First of all, Europeans have wrapped up the world's economic system. They control the world's economic system if you're talking about money. That's not going to get us where we need to go as a nation of people. We need to be clear. We have serious work to do. We've got to start thinking revolutionary instead of talking about being revolutionary thinkers. Oh, no. There's a world of difference between those two. We can't continue to be stuck in the past. I say it all of the time. You and I cannot stay stuck in the past. We've got to be able to move, learn from the past, glean the positive things from the past. But you also have got to be able to identify the negatives in your past, in our past. We've got to be able to do that. And then we've got to build upon the positive things and learn from the negative. And when we do that, now you're talking liberation. So to end, what Dr. Clark said was absolutely right. We have no friends. We have no friends because we're weak and vulnerable. That's why. He was absolutely right. We don't have any friends. The only one that a weak and vulnerable people is going to attract is predators. And they're going to be attracted to you because they want something that you got. And they know it's going to be a cakewalk to take it from you. And they proved it. They proved it because they've taken just about every aspect of African life. We work for them. We fight for them. We die for them. We need to be clear. We need to be clear. So we got work to do. And let me say this very quickly. One of the things that we need to do as a people, we need to stop wearing our feelings on our sleeve. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I learned that from my teacher, Dr. C1 Babalawo Karunama. He said one of the things that African people have got to do, we got to stop wearing our feelings on our sleeve. And he was absolutely right. We've got to stop doing that. We got to stop interpreting when people tell us the truth that hurts our feelings. We start saying that they're arrogant. Everything that somebody say that whenever anybody says anything that hurts our feelings, we automatically slap a label on them. They arrogant. It's not arrogant when you tell someone the truth.
Absolutely.
Is it the truth?
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the things that we've got to do. And this is something that is horrible among those who claim to be African conscious or African centered. This is a big problem among those who claim to be African conscious and African centered. That's a big problem. Everything is an insult or somebody being arrogant. How are they insulting you when they're telling you the truth?
Yeah. Being negative, being condescending. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Kindness, all the rest of that. But see, the reality is when someone is living a lie, the only one who's going to think that someone is being arrogant and condescending when they tell them the truth, the only one who thinks that the truth is arrogant and condescending is someone who's living a lie. Someone who's about the business of truth is going to thank the individual that tells them the truth. They ain't gonna go to no name calling and labeling and all the rest of that crap.
Yeah.
They're gonna thank them. And be clear. And I'm clear. I'm crystal clear. When you think, and hear me well, when you think that you're right, it is painful when you find out the truth. It is. You've been thinking that you were right, and you find out that what you have been thinking was right is wrong. I get that. It doesn't make you feel good to find out that you've been wrong all of this time. But see, if you are a true seeker of truth, your focus is going to be on that truth. And you making the necessary changes to make that lie that you've been living to make it right. And that is the mindset that those of us who claim that we're conscious and committed, that is the mindset that all of us must have. And ultimately, that's the mindset that every African man, woman, and child on the earth has got to come into. We've got to develop a love for truth, a love for correction. We've got to develop that. Okay. And that's all of us. And does that mean you too, Dr. Shakari? Absolutely. I tell people all of the time, you tell me the truth. Don't be worried about whether it's going to hurt Dr. Shakari's feelings and all. No, you tell me the truth. I don't wear my feelings on my sleeve. You tell me the truth and let me deal with the truth. Now, don't come to me telling me no nonsense and think that I'm going to accept it as the truth, because I'm going to respond to your nonsense with, guess what? I'm going to respond to your nonsense with truth.
With truth. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Shakari, we are winding down in time. I really want to thank you for one point of clarity, which I think is probably the most important takeaway from here, is that in relation to us having no friends in the world, we are easily marked and slated for annihilation. And I think that's probably the most important thing for us to understand is, yes, we were able to survive all of our past experiences. Mm-hmm. But when we look at history, it wasn't us surviving these experiences on our own. We were surviving under the domination and control of someone else.
That's right.
You made it very clear that when that someone else no longer has a purpose for you,
come on,
genocide and annihilation is the next step.
Yes, sir. You are absolutely right. You hit the nail right on the head. Dr. Clark said in that same tape, we have no friends. He said, and I'm just paraphrasing, he said that if we started being friends to each other, we wouldn't need any outside friends. He was absolutely right. If we start being friends to ourselves, start becoming independent producers, skilled fighters, producers of our own modern sciences, technologies, engineering techniques, machinery, weaponry, and all the rest of that. If we started doing all of that, we wouldn't have to worry about having any external friends. They'd be flocking to you like ants to honey, or bees to honey. Okay. You'd have so many friends, you'd be saying, wow. Okay. So that is not our biggest worry. Our biggest worry, just like Dr. Clark pointed out, our biggest worry has been we haven't been friends to each other. Okay.
We're going to need a whole truth and reconciliation campaign. As you stated, we're going to have to be able to deal with the truth and then reconcile our differences, and maybe even start a whole new love movement to where we can love ourselves and love each other.
Love ourselves and love each other. Yes, sir. I love that. I'm gonna coin that term, right?
Hey, I know you're gonna put it to good use.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you again. Thank you so much. This has been very, very powerful. I think out of all of our discussions, man, and maybe we just needed this extra time to get things out. This has been the most impactful discussion that we've had, and I can't wait to get it prepared and put it out there for everyone else to dive into. So thank you again, and I'll look forward to our next time.
Yes, sir, brother. Power always, freedom and independence without compromise or apology.
Indeed. Dr. Shakari, until next time, take care.
Yes, sir.